Now, Patrick, I'm just looking at this data here. Alberta is the only market that from a sales unit perspective, not a price perspective, like the number of sales, it's the only one that is up significantly. For example, Calgary is up 17% in terms of their sales, whereas most places in Ontario are down 25, 30, 35, 45% in terms of unit sales. So, as you mentioned, and we'll talk about Alberta in a second, but Alberta's humming along. It's definitely churning a lot more out there than other markets.
Well, we've talked about Alberta for actually about the past 2 years. We talked Calgary specifically. Edmonton always follows Calgary in terms of that housing market. But when we look at we have to talk about immigration, then we have to talk to interprovincial migration. And when we look at what's happening, the headlines are talking a lot about how many residents are leaving Ontario. And of course, you're having British Columbia leave those provinces to do what? To move to Alberta. And then we have to look at why. So this is all part of the long-term real estate success formula. You start to see GDP growth in Alberta be strong because of oil, but also because of diversification. And then you've got the cost of living, which is lower, the cost of housing, which is lower. And then most importantly, the pay that you're receiving in Alberta continues to be the highest in the country on a per week basis. On top of that, you don't have provincial sales tax, or you don't have provincial sales tax. And the next thing you know, your cost of living is significantly lower. And guess where people are migrating to, given what's happening? Alberta. So we look at the Alberta market, and that's why owning real estate as an investment opportunity in that province is good. Now, you still have to buy the right property. You have to buy for cash flow. You have to look at what's going on in the neighborhood. You have to get into the details. It's not like just throw money into Alberta and hope it sticks.
I think we might sell our property in Alberta, by the way.
Okay, well, getting out early, but go ahead.
Yeah, probably, but no one ever went broke doubling their money. So
that's true. It's true.
So okay, that was a little sidebar. I should probably tell my investors that they don't even know yet. I just announced it here first, so I should probably not do that. So I just want to kind of theme this real quick, because for anyone who's been following Ray and following you and I for some time, as the pandemic ramped up and as real estate ramped up, what were we saying? We were saying, be careful and be very strategic with your moves. Do not get into the froth of the market. And yes, there's money to be made. I've given a lot of examples of deals I've done that were ultra successful and super profitable in COVID, but we were being very strategic and very wise and very, very careful. And now as the market has turned, when everyone else is fearful, Patrick, you and I are saying, listen, now's the time, like start loading up here. And I'm not saying loading up in terms of buying everything that moves, but I'm saying the deals are now showing up. This is where the opportunities are. And if you have a timeline that's long enough in real estate, I'm telling you, you're going to look back on this time and say, oh, I'm so glad that the market cooled off the way it did. I finally was able to get in. And I'm seeing that in all the markets I invest in. Things that were unattainable, price points, Patrick, in the low 400s, which have been unattainable. Now, definitely coming back on the market, giving us great cash flow opportunities.
Well, and I know I'm Mr. Alberta, but back to Alberta. It really is, we're not restricted by
let's call it Albertario, which is what it is. It's mostly Ontarians at this point.
Because it makes sense. And when you look at what's happening with rising rents, we don't have rental caps. I mean, BC, 2%, inflation's 8%, but you can raise your rents 2%. I mean, these are the kinds of things that, Alberta has had the foresight so far to not engage in landlord, what's the word I'm looking for?
Tenant board.
Tenant board. Yeah. Landlord rules, tenant restrictions.
Rent
restrictions.
So just to wrap this up, Patrick, as we start to wind down, let's talk about why you and I don't want to say this is the bottom of the market. I don't want to say this is the lowest the prices are going to get, because it's impossible for anybody to make that call. If anybody makes that call, that's fine, but it's exactly that. It's just a call. But definitely, Patrick, my personal belief is that for any market that has dropped, you have dropped more in the last little bit than you will drop in the next little bit, meaning the big drop is out of the way, so to speak, if your market has dropped. And by the way, a lot of markets haven't dropped. The point is Why do we believe that, Patrick, is the conversation I want to have. I think it comes down to immigration. I think it comes down to supply and demand, which is, we haven't fixed that problem, by the way, folks. We have not fixed the supply and demand problem we've been talking about. And Patrick, all of that comes into this, also interprovincial migration, like you've been talking about. That's why I believe that most of the drop we are going to experience, we have experienced, and I think going forward, very, very bright for investors.